We're live and recording now.
Welcome everybody to the ordinary meeting of the Taharoa Domain Governance Committee. We've had to delay a little bit to get everyone online with our technology, but we've got a full house, which is fantastic. Kia hora te marino, kia whakapapa Ponamo te moana, kei huarahi mā tātou I te rangi nei. Aroha atu, aroha mai tātou ia tātou katoa.
Kia ora.
And we have no apologies today, and we will move on to the confirmation of the agenda, which I'm happy to move. Do we have a seconder for that, please?
Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Nesbitt.
Yes.
Okay, so all those in favour?
Aye.
Arrange your hand,
Aye.
say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carried. Moving on to the conflict of interest declaration. Does anyone have any conflicts of interest that they would like to declare? No, thank you. And we have no presentations today. So we move on to the minutes of the meeting of the 10th of August 2021. And I'm happy to move that they are true and correct. Have a seconder for that, please.
Yep.
Thank you, Rick.
Yep.
Anything that anyone wants to raise around those minutes?
Not three.
Okay, all those in favour, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion carried. We're now moving into our first item for today, which is the Taharoa Domain Quarterly Report. And we have with us General Manager of Customer Experience, Darlene Lang. Are you with us, Darlene?
There she goes.
The
Morning,
floor is yours. Thank you.
very much. I would like to take this opportunity to introduce to you our new EWE Relations Team. Missy, are you able to turn your camera on? And there we go. Morena. I'd like to introduce you to Jack Rudolph. He's our new EWE Relations Manager, and also Missy Hokai, who is our Māori advisor. So that's a new role, and I just thought this was a cool opportunity for them to meet you all, and no doubt we'll get to do it in person sometime soon. So
Wonderful. Thanks, Darlene. Welcome, Missy and Jack. Nice to see you.
Kia ora.
Absolutely. Coming up with your korua.
cool. Kia ora. Right, so I'll go to my report. So you're going to see that it's a change report. It's quite a big report. I've just been reflecting a lot on this governance group and being involved with it on and off for a number of years. So and listening to the conversations, and I feel that at times, and you guys will be frustrated as well, we feel like nothing is happening. So I've been looking at ways that I can be like more transparent around what is going around the lakes, and so that's the reason that I've developed this new report. Happy for any feedback on the look of the report as well. And so I suppose it's about giving you all the information you require to be able to make really good decisions. There's a lot of governance / operations type statements in there, but I know that you guys have been doing this long enough that you know the difference between governance and operations, but it's just about putting it all together to give you the information. And I think it's trying to give you all the information so that you're not kept wondering about what is happening. And I've also got Debbie, my EA. She's going to capture any actions that you guys might come up with throughout this report that doesn't get captured in our governance minutes because they're not a decision-making mechanism, but then you know that we're actually going to be working on those things behind the scenes as well. So anything that I want to discuss with you guys, or you get some sort of direction or things like that on, it'll be in this report. And then if we need to have a decision, things like that made, I'll come back to you guys with another report around the decision that I'm needing you to make. And also too, if you guys want anything added to my report, please feel free to send it to me. And then that just helps us, provides us an opportunity to open it up for discussion as well. And what I'm hoping is that that will provide you guys with some trust going forward that things are being done, and then that can help us to free up and to concentrate our time on the future of the lakes. And yeah, also keeping in mind too that as per the terms of reference, this group is to govern the domain in accordance with the Reserve Management Plan. So that's our guiding document, which is why you will see in your report that I've pulled all of those out of the Reserve Management Plan, all the actions, so you can actually see how we're tracking with that as well. So I'll just flick over to the report. So I'll just quickly go through, because I'm sure you guys have all read the report, but I did just want to update you on a few things. So we have now got, so the Taharoa domain all comes under me now, so under the customer experience team. So that's the campground and the parks officers. So we have got a full team up there now. So we've got Kaya, Ladbrook, and Anna Rusin, who's in the campgrounds. We've got Mike Collins and Jordan Holster, who are in the parks side of things. And they are all managed by Nadine Spring, my customer support manager. So we're also been working very closely with Taharoa around filling in some of the staff that we need in the peak times over Christmas and things like that too, like for cleaners or ambassadors and things like that. I'll just skip through that. You'll see we've made mention of Crate Day a few times. I'm not sure if you've heard of Crate Day, but it's the most ridiculous thing ever. But yes, so it just encourages binge drinking, and apparently over the last couple of years it's caused quite a problem. So we have been working with Taharoa on that and to help us to manage it on the day. So then I've just popped in, so I've been in contact with our representatives from DOC and NRC and also the Galaxis Science Group. So they've all put in their updates there. Something that we will potentially have to look at in the future too, and I need to sort of suss it out a little bit, is around that NRC's reduction in budget commitments. So I need to flesh that out a little bit and see what that is about. Project updates. So we have money set aside for the toilets up there. However, we're wanting to, so we're currently working on our compliance issues, which may require some more toilets. So what we're looking at is putting that money aside and just holding it there, seeing what we actually require, and maybe using that money as our contribution for TIF funding. So we just we're working through that one to be a little bit more strategic around it rather than just building some toilets. The security, so that's still out. We just got to do the evaluation report. So that's basically doing CCTV and also gates at the main entrances to Pine Beach and Promenade Point. So we've got the financials there. So hopefully Villy, which doesn't look like she is. I thought Villy was going to be online to talk to us about that. So if you have any questions, the risk register. So we've just been, Graham Coleman has been going through all of the organisation's risk. So we have a new system set up. So we're just going to, I've yet to go through the Lakes one. I've done all the other customer experience team. So I'll be able to come and report to you on where we're sitting at with risk with regards to the domain as well. The other thing I'm wanting us to do in the next quarter is just looking at all our health and safety standards and registers and things like that, our training, just to make sure that, particularly with all the new staff there now, and also it's always a good time to look at those things when there's new staff and a new fresh set of eyes as well. Now the compliance issue. So that came to me as a bit of a surprise, but we're just getting on with it. So we don't comply with regards to the number of toilets, basins, things like that. But what we're doing is we're going to get one of our environmental health officers up. They're going to be up there on Friday to actually do another audit so we can really pinpoint what it is we need, and whether it is just a matter of being able to put in some portaloos over the peak season, whether that helps us to comply, and what we actually have to do as far as infrastructure or some hard builds around toilets or things like that. So we're working quite closely with them at the moment. As far as the water take, the wastewater goes, the infrastructure team have reported back and all has been good over this last quarter, but we all know that this is a very quiet quarter. Education centre, so we haven't had it hired out at all either, and at some stage it'd be good to come back to you guys with a report around what we might want to do with that centre, and as far as like turning it into a proper education centre and working with Te Roro and NRC and DOC and that to provide a proper education centre that we can bring schools to and things like that. Events, so none this quarter, but coming up, the Sport Northland 3 Lakes run has been cancelled, so that's not on anymore, but unfortunately Crate Day hasn't been, so we have to watch the space. And I also just provided a bit of a flow chart because I was sort of trying to work out who does what at the domain, and so that's why I've set up that flow chart so we can just see the different agencies and that are working in the lakes and what their roles are. So I'm still to nail some of that down because some of it's a little bit blurred when I talk to people, but we'll get that sorted. And the other thing, so I've just popped in here for this is one of my little discussion points, and I'm not sure, but I know that those of you that have been involved with Poutu Otarangi, they have like a signage plan, and I'm just wondering, because Sport Northland would like to put a sign up there around coming events for the events and things up at the lakes, and it just made me think about actually the number of signs in that site and in the domain, and if there is actually any structure around that. So that's something I'd like to talk to you guys about, of what you might want to do with that, if you want me to come back to you with a report just on the Sport Northland one, or if you would like me to look at some sort of signage plan for the area, or even if there may be one, but I haven't been able to find it. But so yeah, some thoughts on that. And then so I've just popped in there what we will be doing in the next quarter. And then I think the only thing I really want to go to next is the reserve management plan action. So you can see that all the green things are either are completed or are being worked on or as a work in progress sort of thing, and then the red ones are the things that we will be working on, or if the decision is made at one of these meetings that some of the things are not appropriate anymore, it could also be taken out. So I think I'm just going to leave it there for now and just open it up for questions. Thank you very much for allowing me the time just to talk you guys through it.
Thanks very much, Darlene. That's really thorough reporting and great summary. So any questions, just raise your hand in person or virtually, and we'll just go around the room. Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, just a question, Darlene. The water take from the lake,
yes,
with the local residents, there's been some talk that they may be exceeding their take. Can we have a report? Can we check on that?
Yes, absolutely.
Because the water level has been, well, the last time I was up there it was lower.
Yeah.
I think Sonny and I have talked about that one, Sonny. And
yes, Rick. Yes, that's true. And the reality is that there's no reporting. If the reporting should be coming back to council anyway.
Yeah.
In regards to the takes.
So if you don't, I can answer that, Darlene, or I can add a bit of context to that. So through the chair, it's a permitted activity under NRC, and I don't think they're required to do any reporting on water take for stock. It's one of those unfortunate things that yeah, just happens as far as I know. I can do some more research as well from our end. But yeah, taking water out of that lake for stock is a permitted activity by NRC. And yeah, it is what it is, unfortunately. And yeah, I think you're aware of the issues around that.
So I think what we can do about that, because even if it is a permitted thing, that somebody needs to report to us. I mean, it's our role, isn't it, to look after that? So yep, we'll look into that more.
Even a permitted activity should be permitted, but it should still be an amount that's able to be taken.
Yeah, that's right.
I agree.
I don't care what way you're taking out of the amount taken out of should be under resource consent.
Absolutely. And someone should be monitoring that. So there should be a report. Yep.
And I was going to ask another question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Under what level, if I think the north is either in level 2 tonight or tomorrow, is that correct? So
Yep.
will the campground be open under level 3 or only in level 2 or level 1 for the Christmas?
So, yeah, we are constantly monitoring that at the moment. We're actually going through the database to see the addresses of where everyone is from, to kind of keep monitoring that and see what we do. Because if Auckland does stay locked down or whatever, we would put some sort of promotion out to Northland. The lakes have been open, so they stayed open. In level 3, we've kind of gone for the ones that have the self-contained. So that way we don't have to be there staffing it, and we go and see them. We tell them what level we're in. We're not staffing the place, and they have to be self-contained. So we have been open, and at level 2 definitely will be open. And as far as the Aucklanders and things like that go, we are constantly monitoring that database at the moment. It is booked. So yeah, we're just going to keep monitoring that. And if for some reason the Aucklanders can't come up, then we'll quickly put out a bit of a promotion to Northland and
COVID restrictions.
capture that.
Thanks, Darlene.
Cool.
Just wait some of us.
To Councillor Joyce Paki and then Mayor Smith. Thank you.
Kia ora, Atamari, darling. Ngā mihi for your update. I'm just looking at the what have you called it? The red and green spreadsheet, and on there, it's in red, that cultural impact assessment, how it couldn't be found.
Yep.
I'm interested to know, what was it done, and where does that water take fit inside the cultural take, like the cultural impact assessment?
Yeah.
Is there something in there, if you find it,
Yeah.
that be practical or obvious to leverage off around why it's important to measure the amount or volume of water being taken out of that taonga?
Yeah.
It's
Great question. Yeah.
It's quite surprising.
Yeah. So if I can't find that report, I'm going to have to commission another one. But yep, that's a great question.
Mayor Smith. You're
on
muted.
mute, Mayor Smith.
Thank you. Kia ora. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Darlene, for this clear report. I have a question that's related to the compliance section of your report.
Yeah.
And it's a question for clarification. So it's in the way this report is written.
Yeah.
Which I'm just uncertain about. So, for example, you've said here, wash hand basins regulations require 6 per 250 persons. There are currently 8.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it would appear to me that there's a missing bit, which is on peak days. That means that there are 27 too few wash basins.
Yes.
Is that what we're supposed to read into this?
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. I know. Trying to work out these formulas honestly has been a nightmare. And So I've asked for the environmental health officer to come up and actually lay that out for us. You know, it's on those peak days, how many, so that we can, provide a better picture of how we are not complying, you might say. So they're going to provide us with those figures.
Okay, thank you. So this is just, so where it says currently 8, we currently have 8 showers.
Yes. Based on numbers.
And is that for, of course, that's for both campgrounds?
Yes.
So, so there are questions ultimately, and it's not necessarily about building up every part of this network as the demand continues to grow.
Yes.
It is about where it's all going. So thank you for clarifying that. Thank you. I have a second question, Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Certainly.
And it relates to the events and the Crate Day event.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And the issue, if you like, that Sport Northland has cancelled their event due to COVID, but Crate Day, which is, if you like, a high school end of school event taking place. What are the liabilities for the council, or the risks for the council regarding the reserve being holding an event with, I'm going to say, 500 people?
It won't be authorised. They'll just turn up and do it. Right?
Oh. Do you want to mute, Rick? We can't. Do you want to mute your? Sorry, Mr. Mayor. What? So the risks around the 500 people turned up for Crate Day.
Correct.
So it's and
the COVID rules say that they can't do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that we've been working with the police as well. So we've notified them, and they're going to come and do some visits as well, but also getting our staff all up to date on what is happening with regards to that. We are managing the camp, so we're going through the database at the campground as well to see who's staying and for finding out what they're staying for some of them as well, just to make sure we don't have a whole heap of people, 30 people up there camping, and we can kind of see that's what it's for, and trying to discourage that as much as we can. And then also working with the with Taharoa and getting some ambassadors and security up there as well over that period, just walking around and trying to keep an eye on everyone. So I suppose the risk is, you know, a heap of drunk people around annoying everybody, including campers that are there not for Crate Day, and also our staff who have to put up with that behaviour as well. So we're trying everything we can to discourage Crate Day, but we know what people are like, and we know how people are with binge drinking, and apparently it's actually a university student thing is where it all started.
Yeah. Okay.
Thanks, Darlene. Are there any other questions around the table, please? Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Yeah, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up, that Crate Day is down for Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest, I'm not sure about Sunny, but I've never heard of Crate Day before.
You're lucky.
Okay. Sunny?
I have heard of it, but not to an extent where it was actually an organisation.
Yeah,
You know,
it's not an organisation. It's just become a bit of a national event, unfortunately.
Yes, well, you know, what protections have we in place apart from monitoring, security, etc., that says that, hey, it doesn't, we're not able to allow things like this to come with people just bring, you know, alcohol. It's still a public place.
Yes, the trouble is, so it is a public place, you're right, but there is no alcohol ban around that area, so people can just rock on up, and you know the size of the place too, and just sit down and start drinking their 12 bottles out of their crate from 12 till midnight. So yeah, we're trying everything we can to discourage it. But yes, you know what New Zealanders can be like around that sort of thing.
Mr. Chair, I think we should ask the police to attend on that day.
Yep, they are going to attend. I've been in discussions with the police, and they are going to do visits throughout the day. I've also got my animal control guys on alert as well, and so they're all watching officers as well, and they all are aware of this as well, and will also be going up there and doing visits.
Okay, thanks, Darlene.
Thank you, Darlene. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, a question from Councillor Joyce Pucky.
Thank you. I just want to ask if we might want to re-look at a bylaw around the drinking around the lake. And I know we've raised this before, because currently the only rule we have in place for drinking or not drinking is at the education centre. So the education centre you can't drink in, yet outside on the grass you can drink to your heart's desire. So I know it's been raised before, and I wonder whether or not we have to look at it again with particular interest to these groups that are popping up and taking advantage of it, because it comes at a cost to us and our ratepayers to put additional staff in place when we get nothing in return, because they're day walkers. So they're only coming in for the day, they're using all the resources, and they're leaving, potentially leaving rubbish behind too. So it's going to come at a cost, and it'll be interesting to see what that cost, what the actual cost is post the event. If you could, Darlene, because I expect there'll be additional rubbish, staff, and costs that we're going to have to pick up, which has to be included or found somewhere in that activity. Kia ora.
Just on the bylaw, so yes, we definitely want to look into that. And Nadine and I started to do something around that. The trouble is nothing has been recorded about alcohol abuse and things like that. So that's something that we are going to start recording now, and then that can help us to put any sort of bylaw in place. However, it's also too, though, like, you know, for the few that don't behave properly, you know, we've got a whole campground full of people that like to have a beer over their holidays. So I think we have to be quite mindful of that too, of the, you know, the few that actually abuse it could ruin it for a lot of others as well. But Nadine and I were sort of looking at ways that we can put in something, particularly for crate days and things like that. But we need to be able to have reported incidences. So we've told the staff that everything has to be reported now.
Was that a thumbs up, Councillor Joyce Pucky, for a question, or all good?
All good, thank you.
Okay, well, if there aren't any further questions, we have a staff recommendation before us here to note the report. Could we have that up on the screen, please, Tracy?
Oh, Mr. Chair, can I just jump in too?
Sure, go ahead.
Signage plan. What are you guys' thoughts on that? So obviously Sport and Awesome want to put up a sign, but I think it's a bit bigger than that. What are your thoughts on the signage up there?
Mia Smith.
Unmute. Kia ora. Sorry. My key thought is that it should have been in the reserve management plan regarding what the rules are for signage or not. And so that it's all in one neat document. The signage is potentially visual pollution. It's also information, but it's certainly visual pollution. So the locations where signs can go and cannot go, you wouldn't want a giant board big as a bus on one of the headlands, overlooking Taharoa. It's those sorts of things. So I believe it would be part of a review of the reserve management plan, and needs to be addressed through that approach.
Yeah.
Thoroughly, but I would say thoroughly addressed. Yeah, as part of that future. That's my suggestion.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Has anyone else got any comment on the question about signage from Darlene?
Yeah, just a small comment. If the signage is allowed to go in, then what's to stop other signage going in? Because the sign is a pope. If you start doing that and allowing that to come up, that's not in relation to the actual lakes. It's about an event and a part of an event that is occurring. Put by all means advertise, but it's not your whenua to put your po in.
Yep. Thank you.
Councillor Joyce Pucky.
Kia ora. Yeah, I support what our mayor has said around including it in the reserve management plan or tightening it up, because I know we've used the reserve management plan previously to prevent other things being put there. So yeah, taking that approach would be the right way to at least have the conversation. Kia ora.
Cool.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
Yes, I was about to say that caution is a good way to go about it. I think Jason covered it extremely well. Yeah, I support it. Yeah.
Thank you.
If I could, sorry, just to emphasise the reserve management plan, His Worship is right. It should be in the reserve management plan, and it can be. It doesn't actually necessarily need a review under the Reserves Act. This committee could recommend to the council to add a signage plan to the reserve management plan under the Reserves Act.
Councillor Joyce Pucky, I saw you raised your hand again. Did you have some other comment you wanted to make?
I did. It's moving on from this. It's just with regards to an upcoming event that I heard of yesterday that I wanted to capture in the operations and make sure they're aware of it.
Okay, do you want to relay that now?
We finished with the previous? Yep. Yeah, it's the Dargle Intermediate School. My understanding is from November 29th, which is a Monday. They're up there for the week with the Wakarama crew, and they've booked the education centre. So I believe they're going to reach out to you too, Sunny, for kōrero around. I know I was with snow yesterday and your name came up, so expect a call from Roxanne Kelly just with regards to that activity. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention it.
Cool, thank you.
You just mentioned on that, I would have thought that would have gone through the process in regards to the bookings, and as for any other event that may be there, and for the use of facilities and so forth.
Yep.
Also, so just an update on that. Sorry, I seem to be talking a lot in this meeting. I apologise. So the intermediate school have cancelled their camping booking, but they still want the education centre. So that's still in process, but they're not camping here because of level 2 restrictions around numbers and stuff.
Kapai, kia ora.
Okay, thanks for that, Mike. So Tracy, if we could have that recommendation back up again now, please. Thank you. Okay, so we have a staff recommendation there before us to note the Taharoa Domain quarterly report for August 2021 and October 2021. Do we have a mover for that, please?
I'll move that.
Thank you. Was that
Just me? Yep.
Yep, Sonny, thank you. And a seconder, please.
Aye.
Rick, thank you. Okay, so Sonny, the floor is yours if you'd like to speak to that motion at all.
No, there's no real need to speak to the motion that we're having. The motion is really it's showing a progression, which is really good for me. The way I look at it, it's showing the things to be done and what has been and hasn't been done, and it gives a plan of action. So to me, that's really great.
Thanks, Sonny and Rick.
No, that's cool. Yeah.
Would anyone else like to speak to this motion? Mayor Smith.
Kia ora. I'd like to congratulate Darlene on pulling this report together in a way that summarises a great deal of work that's going on in the background by a lot of people. And this is a new beginning. So thank you for that. And there is so much work and mahi going on regarding the domain on so many levels. So we haven't today discussed or canvassed the Dune Lakes Galaxias issue. We haven't discussed many of the other issues that are linked with this one single report. I am mindful of that, and I'm mindful of, if you like, trying to get governance and this reporting absolutely clear so that all those bits are always being brought along with us as we all move forward. I'm thinking of, particularly in the governance space, of the externally funded projects committee meeting, where we have many individual projects that are each reported on individually. The establishment of that was very challenging for the team, but now that it's up and running, it's actually very simple for everybody. And what it does is it allows very clear, detailed updates on each of the sections of everything, so that you can track over time how it's going. Possibly you may want to consider further developments and changes to these reports, but certainly for now, this is a good and great step forward, and keeping it very simple and all in one place for us as well. The important thing I would really urge is for how, with our best governance hats on, the wisdom of the members of the committee are able to provide korero into the hat, tipping ideas into the hat, everyone always tipping in their best ideas, and that being captured. And I'm not sure how best that can happen, but for this committee, working through ways to get that will help to make a greater and a safer place. There are so many pressures on Taharoa domain from the market, from the people, even during COVID, and especially just as the COVID restrictions are released, that we need to be getting all of our processes really good for all of us here. But certainly great steps today. So thank you, Darlene. Sorry, Mr. Chairman, for my rambly speech, but I hope it was clear. Kia ora.
No trouble. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to concur with some of the points that the Mayor has made, Darlene, and I think this reporting is really improved, and I found it to be quite thorough, and felt that you were really well across all of the issues. So thanks for all your efforts in pulling all that together. It's really appreciated.
Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak? Okay, back to you, Rick. You want to jump in again?
If you wouldn't mind, Mr. Chair. Just in covering the report, it was some years ago that it was decided we asked for a cultural impact assessment, and that's very disappointing to see that it hasn't really even been addressed.
Yeah,
So, yeah, we'd like some action on that one.
absolutely. Yep, totally agree.
Okay, thank you, Rick. Well, back to you, Sonny, if you want to make any closing statement.
No closing statements, thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. All right, so we'll put this motion. All those in favour, raise your
Aye.
hand. Against? Motion carried. Thank you, Darlene. And we're back to you again, Darlene, for our next item. And also in the house today, we have with us consultant Joe Wiggins for the Kaiwera Lakes Campground Future Management Options. So the floor is yours again.
Thank you very much. Joe, did you want to pop your camera? Thank you. There she is. Okay, so I just wanted to lead in onto this report. So I'll take the report as read, and Joe will do a quick presentation shortly just to bring everyone up to speed, and then we'll be available for questions. I did want to just say that this report has been to a council briefing, and so no decisions or anything like that was made, but it was all around timing. I would have preferred to have brought it to this group first, then to the council briefing, then to council for decision. But because of the timing and how it all sort of worked out, it went there first. But yeah, no decisions have been made. What have I got here? And that is why I sent out the reports earlier to you all as well, so that you would be able to get your head around it all. So you'll see in the report around there are 5 options, and the staff's preferred option is that modified status quo, which basically just means council will continue to run the lakes, but with some modifications made. And some of the operational changes that the consultant suggested in her report, we've already started putting in place. For example, having the whole Taharoa domain come under one team to make it easier to manage, and also looking at the structure up there, and also looking at the different processes and systems that Nadine's been putting in place up there. So we've already taken on board a lot of the things. Also with the new reporting template for around the operations for the governance committee, that's something that sort of came out of discussions and that we've been having with Joe. We'd also, what we're looking at doing too is combining the financials. So actually, I'm just working with the accountants because it's not as easy as it may seem, but about actually having the income, here's the income, and this is what's being paid out of it, so that we can actually see that most of the time there is no effect to the ratepayer. Because at the moment, some of the projects and some of the operations is being paid for by financial contributions and rates, but actually the income goes into the rates bucket, and then so it's sort of going round and round. So I'm just trying to work with them so it's easier to report to you guys, so easier to report to everybody actually about what's coming in and what's going out. So working with Billy around that at the moment. Also those compliance issues that were raised by Joe, we're looking at those as well. And also I've been working a lot with Snow lately around how we can work together to provide better experiences through education, tourism, and also local employment, and right on board with that as well. So that's I just wanted to do a little intro into the report, and I'll get Joe to jump in and do the presentation. I'm just trying to, excuse me, Tracy, to share a presentation. Do I go into share content?
You should use the share button and share your screen just as normal.
Right. Can you see that? Can you see the presentation?
No, we can't see it yet.
No.
Was the presentation attached to your report by any chance?
No.
It's coming up now.
Here it comes.
Cool. Right, so I'd like to introduce Jo Wiggins, who has been working on this. Most of you have probably already met her or spoken to her in one way or another. So I'll hand over to you, Jo, and you can just give me a little nod or something when you want the pages flicked over. Thanks, Jo.
Good morning. I think I've met everybody except for Sunny. So kia ora, Sunny. So I'll just quickly go through this. I'm conscious that the Mayor and councillors have seen this, but Rick and Sunny, you haven't seen this presentation. So I shall just move forward. It's just an overview of the review that we undertook and the assessment of the management options for the Kaiwera Lakes campgrounds. And of course, all of this is set in the bigger context of the overall Taharoa Domain Reserve Management Plan and this government's committee as well. So we'll seek your feedback on where we got to with the management options as Darling outlined, and also we've also come up with a set of recommendations as a bit of an adjunct to this in terms of a longer term view of what possibly could happen at the campgrounds. So as I mentioned to the councillors, it won't come as a surprise that the occupancy at Kaiwera Lakes campgrounds is highly seasonal, and that's October to March, but it's now stretching into April with the impact of COVID-19 and domestic visitation. It's key to understand that at Kaiwera Lakes that 97% of the visitors are domestic, and that there's a very limited number of international visitors. And there are two things that reflect in terms of Kaiwera Lakes has a large capacity in terms of visitor nights, how many people it can take over a year, but it's not actually achieving its share of either Kaiwera or the Northland market as it could. So potentially it could have a lot more visitation and take a greater share of the market, but two things probably affect that. One is the fact that it has low international visitation in what used to be our normal lives, and secondly, it really drops off in those shoulder seasons and in the winter, and primarily we think that's due to the lack of facilities that would attract people in those times. So people outside your normal peak season camper set who are happy to be in tents and in basic amenities. As you can see, the occupancy has grown over the last 3 years, and part of that has been driven off this increased domestic visitation because of COVID-19 and people not travelling elsewhere. So Darling, can move to the next slide. In terms of financial performance, there's been an improving financial performance over the last 3 years. There was a change in management, and since then the net operating profit has increased, and it is up to 330,000 in 2021. So that's without council internal charges and rates, which would be the baseline charges that council would sustain regardless of who was managing it. And as I mentioned, and it's linked to the visitation, this is driven primarily off that domestic tourism, which has really increased the visitation overall. However, there is a greater revenue potential, particularly in that shoulder season and the off season, if the committee wishes to promote that. But this would require some capital investment and targeted marketing. So this is all outlined in the report. I'm just giving you a brief summary, but there are some basic amenities that could be added to the campgrounds without having major impact, I don't think, on the sort of environmental priorities and other cultural considerations for the Taharoa Domain. Moving on to the next one. So in terms of the operational review, the strengths of what was currently happening is that Council and the Domain Committee does have direct control over the operations in the business. There is that positive net operating cash flow, but it is a little bit, as I mentioned, it's not artificial, but it is driven on out of the current circumstances we're in with COVID-19. It is a lean operation. There are not great levels of concern in terms of expenditure. It is an affordable camping option compared to other campgrounds and holiday parks, and the experience overall seems to be liked by the campers who actually use it. There are lots of repeat customers over the peak season, but this does drop off dramatically after that January period. And currently the environmental impacts of the campground is minimised most of the year. There's a couple of times, I think, during the peak season where the water intake was exceeded, but that was only 1 or 2 days. And what you have there is a fantastic setting and really well-maintained grounds, and it's in a very attractive place for people to visit. Moving on to the weaknesses, which some of these, as Darling mentioned, have already been addressed. Some of the management of the campgrounds within divisions of council. Some of the systems and payment systems required to be improved, and I know they're being worked on at the moment. And there is a requirement for some investment to meet the campground regulations. And as Darling mentioned, that's also being worked through as to the extent of that. Linking into this, the commentary around the off-season and attracting other non-campers to the campgrounds, one of the weaknesses is we see that there is no sort of built accommodation. And when we mean built accommodation, that could be anything from relocatable cabins to some caravans, to make the campground more competitive in that shoulder and off-season and more attractive to people who aren't necessarily your traditional sort of stay in a tent and basic amenity type campers. There are none of the sort of facilities that you find at other campgrounds or holiday parks, and we're certainly not promoting that it goes to the extent of some of these sort of holiday parks, but some basic amenities may improve that attractiveness in that other seasons. There are some infrastructure constraints that have been reported to us around the power supply, and as I mentioned, just the water take occasionally in the high season. So other forms of power might supplement this, such as solar energy, or the actual power supply itself could be looked at. And the other thing is that there's no 24/7 staff on site. So that kind of customer experience that people get when they turn up, and also for security, etc. Management options, we looked at 5 management options, 3 of them council managed and 2 third party. Darling, we'll just move on to the next slide. So in terms of the management options, we believe that the modified status quo can bring some immediate improvements to the campgrounds management and operations, and you're already seeing that in the reporting and some of the actions that are taken by Darling's team. In the council managed options, council actually benefits directly from any return on capital investment and more amenities, and that flows through into the net operating cash flows. There is the ability also with council and working with yourselves to actually make sure that that environmental impact is kept low and that development is consistent with the Taharoa Domain Reserve Management Plan. There are also opportunities which are currently being pursued around working with Taharoa and developing the Lake Waikere Education Centre further for greater use of schools and other groups. And I think the other thing is that there's time to gain a greater understanding of the campground's potential whilst we're in this COVID-19 sort of scenario where there are no international visitors, and what is the right balance between development and management under the Reserve Management Plan. The downside to all of this, of course, is that all the risks remain with council, and that any capital investment is the responsibility of council. And of course, there's the ability to apply for grants to supplement this, but it's still council's responsibility. In terms of third-party management, This could be either through a management agreement or a lease. There are definitely reduced operational and business risks for council. You can bring in third-party expertise in campground management, and there is potential to optimise other synergies that they may have through businesses or education or other sides to their business that can be linked to these campgrounds. The attractiveness, however, of the current operation may not be great given there is a lack of investment in facilities. And if you look at other third-party management facilities, even Mangawai, they have quite a lot more development than Kaiwera Lakes, or even what's intended probably at Kaiwera Lakes. And there is also at the moment a need to fund working capital over 5 months of the year at present. So it's only cash flow positive 7 months of the year. Any sort of third party or contract management will also require council investment anyway to make the business viable, and a lessee may invest, but this will be traded off against the term with which you would need to enter into the lease so that they can get a payback. And of course, the level of control on the service quality is less, but it is only through the contractual obligations, and it will require contract monitoring and auditing. And the net operating return to council could be lower than current by the time you take into account their need to make a profit and a return on any investment that they may make. So next slide, darling.
Is that it?
I think that might be it apart from the recommendations. Yeah, next slide's recommendations, yes.
Yeah.
So we're suggesting that in the short term that the modified status quo management is the best way to proceed, and that there is investment into amenities to meet the camping ground regulations, and that there is some sort of testing of the feasibility of some form of built accommodation, even if that is just relocatable, that comes in for certain months of the year, and to improve the infrastructure to enable future investment, whether that's more powered sites or laundry facilities or whatever, and to work with Taharoa ongoing to increase the use of the education centre and progress discussions about future involvement in the management of the campgrounds. And there was a 10-year plan developed by this domain committee for consideration in the LTP, and there is some funding further out in the current LTP, but we're suggesting that this also be re-looked at again in the short term, given the outcomes of this review and any changes that come about. And then in the medium term, to progressively invest in facilities at Pine Beach to increase visitation and revenue. As I said, that doesn't necessarily mean motel units. It's not what we're suggesting. And to increase targeted marketing to attract new markets, continue to work with Taharoa on the education centre, and then revisit the campground management options in a few years' time and look for partners that offer those synergies to enhance and attract the operations of the campgrounds while protecting those environmental qualities, the wider domain. So that is it in a summary. Any questions and feedback?
Great. Thanks very much, Joe. So we could just go back to full screen if you can stop
Yes.
sharing.
I would like to do that too. How do I stop sharing, Tracy?
Just run your mouse up to the top of your presentation and it should bring you a drop down potentially.
Yes. Share my
and then it should say stop sharing on the left or something like that.
sharing. Look at that. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you very much for your presentation, Darlene and Joe. We'll just go around the room and have a couple of rounds of questions if they arise, which I'm sure they will. Just raise your hand if you've got a question and we'll go around the room. Councillor Joyce Plucky.
Morena, thank you for that presentation. I actually got to see most of it today. The other day I dropped in and out of service, so thank you again. I'm keen to know, like, if we were to invest and create infrastructure or accommodation, and then the revenue goes up, is there some sort of assurance that that money would be then put back into that reserve, or does it just go into a pool to be dispersed everywhere?
Through the chair, Councillor Joyce Bucky, that, like I was saying before, I am working with the accountants because that's the model I would like to use. But with our accounting systems and the way the council budgets are set up, it's taking me a little while. So I will report back on that when I know more.
Any other members want to ask questions of the staff?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Rick.
So where is the next move on this report? Is it go back to council?
Yes. So I'm seeking direction from this governance committee today to take back to council for a decision.
Okay. Well, so far as my thinking is, so far as the structure, it would be good to consult EWE, and I guess that there have been ongoing talks with Taharoa, and if it's to be tendered out or leased out, for EWE to have first option.
All right, has anybody else got any further questions for staff? Appears not. Okay. Well, we have a recommendation before us. If we could have that up on the screen, please, Tracy. So the staff recommendation is option 1, which is to approve the modified status quo, but we do have 5 options before us. Is anybody of a mind to want to move this staff recommendation or a different recommendation? Yeah, Mayor Smith, thank you.
Yes, kia ora. Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to move this.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There we have a seconder.
Can I ask, is there more discussion required? I'm interested to hear input from you, Sunny, in particular, as to Rick's kōrero.
Well, Councillor Joyce Pucky, we've been through a presentation. I've given several opportunities for people to ask questions, and we're now looking for a seconder to a moved motion. So procedurally, if we don't have a seconder, I guess we could we have some guidance there, Tracy?
If there isn't a seconder and we can, and nobody else wants to put a motion on the table, it will just lay as unresolved. It just lays there.
Mr. Mayor.
Kia ora. Yes, normally, of course, just put it, moving and seconding a motion, puts it onto the table. It can then be amended, which is part of our process. So, but of course, if there is no seconder, then it doesn't even get that far, at which point the entire subject lapses. So.
Okay, so thank you, Mr. Mayor, for that clarification. Is anyone wanting to second this motion? Okay.
Through the chair.
Yes.
Sorry, Gavin Dawson here. Just for clarity for the committee, that the campground doesn't formally form part of the remit of this committee. So it is an information noting, but the information and feedback provided from the committee is really very important. So don't feel that what the recommendation that goes in this decision will have a direct impact, but it should note that feedback. Just as a procedural terms of reference clarification there. Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin. Okay, so just finally then, if there is there a seconder for this motion? And if not, then we'll have it lapse. Okay, so Rick, you're raising your hand. Are you seconding the motion?
Yep.
Okay, we have a seconder. Thank you. Okay. Well, Mr. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Okay, kia ora. Thank you. There's a lot in this,
Yes.
and where I sit with it is, and when it came through at the council last week, I started thinking, and I'm still listening and thinking today, and forming a view here.
Yes.
There's a real challenge for the committee and for the council regarding the tension, and I'll call it the tension between lots of people want to go to the lakes and they want a really beautiful hot water cafes and restaurants and nightclubs and all that. And then you have other people who want a really pristine place where there are no facilities at all. And we have all of these pressures coming in. And it is up to this committee to be working with those tensions in this space. One of the important things in this subject that we're talking about the management of the campground, is that I believe that that should be held as closely as possible to this committee and the current council structures as it can be, rather than leasing it out to someone else, which takes away all of the governance safety nets that we have inside this committee and the council and all of the democratic structures of that. There are hundreds of people out there who would love to lease the sites for the campgrounds at the Taharoa domain. I have absolutely no doubt of that.
Yes.
And so where we are with this is, I wouldn't want to see someone coming in who says, well, we're now the new commercial leaseholder and we want to achieve A, B, C, X, Y, Z to get X profit out of this enterprise. And therefore we need a cafe and we need a restaurant and we need a 300-room hotel and all of that, and it's going to be great. And I go, wait, stop. What does success look like? What are we trying to get to here? And only in this option, the modified status quo option, do I believe that this committee and the council would have safety and safeguards in place for the future ahead. Now that's for anybody who's coming in with a commercial lease, for whatever, because the key word being, of course, commercial. They're doing it for a business. Council, bless it, is not running these businesses only for financial gain. It's running the place to be providing a service and safety and environmental security and cultural security for the people who are visiting that very, very pristine place, and fragile. And when I say pristine, what I mean there is the fragility of our dune lake system, where we all know that anything that happens there in the water or in the catchment stays there forever. So I'm just really mindful of that. So I'm saying the modified status quo approach is the baby steps approach for us into a future as we're trying to be growing a better Kaipara in this place. So that is why I recommend this, or have moved this motion. The other options are less acceptable to me. So there is still a lot of korero to be had on this subject, but I'll just leave that there for now. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Now over to you, Rick, as the seconder.
I totally agree with what the Mayor has just said, Jason. That was very well thought out. I go along with that. If there was to be a change, as I reported to Roro, I'm not speaking for them, but they have an interest with Te Kuihi. But I go along with what Jason has outlined there. Totally support it. Well done, Jason.
Thank you, Rick. Would other members like to speak to the motion? Councillor Joyce Paki and then Sunny, thank you.
Kia ora. Yeah, I also support the modified, what's it called, status quo, for the reasons that our Mayor has outlined. I suppose for me, one of the things or critical pieces that's missing is the cultural impact assessment. So that, for me, to be able to move that site forward is a critical piece of information missing and needs to be prioritised. We're midway through the RMP. I believe we'll be looking, or someone will be looking at it around 2023, 24, to put the new one out for the next 10 years. So in a sense, it's a good short-term solution. I don't know if it is the necessary solution in the long term. I know we've had conversations, many conversations, and even when I was with Doc, many conversations about who is the right entity or partnership to manage that site. And I know back then, I'm going back 6 years ago, EWE had put their hand up. So I'm interested to understand what the future is for that site long term, once we've done proper consultation with Te Roroa, Te Kuihi, and those that have a direct connection to that site, to understand what that looks like in perpetuity. So yeah, in the interim, soft infrastructure. I know that we've talked about, issues around toilets and laundries and all those things. And yes, they are important for visitor experience. But I'm not too sure what that looks like without doing proper consultation with our treaty partner. So in the interim, I do support the motion. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce Paki. Sunny.
Yes, I totally agree with firstly what Jason is speaking of, and really speaking of a huge change in mainly the visual, the use, and the cultural impact it may have on the future going forward. What will it look like? It's straight away to mind. A picture comes of the buildings and people owning little bits and pieces of this and that, and if you get, I actually think the council is doing quite a good job. you know, there's lots of things developing in regards to the kaitiaki, because really we're only kaitiaki of it. And do we want to turn it into a meka so that it looks like a meka, or do we want it to maintain its Māori? And that, to me, is the biggest thing. It's about those lakes maintaining its authenticity, its nativity, its realness, its ability to survive over the many years prior to us even getting put on it. You know, and the reality is it's been left in our hands, to be the kaitiaki of this area. If we're talking about commercialism, because that's what will happen in the lease. It will be about commercialism, and why not, you know, and why not? Shouldn't there be commercial enterprises that they do something like that they do it to make money? Do they still have the care and attitude in regards to the kaitiaki of that area, of this area? And to me, that doesn't fit into this report in any way. and therefore in regards to that, the future doesn't actually regard the maintenance of the kaitiakitanga of these lakes. In my opinion, all it does is talk about structure and infrastructure and how we can best govern the status quo, putting things together so that that's all one. That's fine. There's no issues with that. It's who gave this vision? Where did this vision come from? We're saying that we need to bring people to you know, promote our lakes. It needs no promotion. It needs, you know, it needs to be kept as natural as it possibly can be. God's sake, you know, all those trees gone, starting to regenerate its own native. There's fauna been going up around, and yes, it looks nice. Let's keep it that way. If there's other areas of the lakes that are not being used wisely, I assume simply because it's a public domain, or the rules and regs. You know, why aren't we meeting consent resource? Is it because of numbers? See, as far as I was concerned, we were always meeting consent resource. And then now all of a sudden I find we're not. Is it because of the numbers? Is it because of the capacity? None of that feedback has come back. And we've always asked it. So, you know, and I don't see that in the report either. And Jason talked about something very pristine that really has when it's in that condition, it really has that ability to turn to the opposite. So maintaining the kaitiaki of those taonga is paramount. That's why I didn't support the motion.
Thank you, Sonny. Back to you, Mia Smith. You're muted.
Diane, sorry. Thank you for all the kororo on this. I look forward to a vote and seeing what comes to pass here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mia Smith. Could we have the motion up on the screen, please, Tracy?
And it's not very big either. Oh, that's better. That's ours.
Okay, so before you, the motion that we have moved and seconded. So I'm now going to put that motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against? Motion carried. Thanks, Tracy.
So, Mr. Chairman, could I call for a division on this, please?
Yes, a division called. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay. Just bear with me. I won't be a minute. I spent. Councillor Joyce Paki.
4.
Councillor Jonathan Larson.
Against?
Rick Perori.
4.
Sunny Nesbitt.
Against. Against, sorry.
So Mayor Smith.
4.
That is 3-4-2 against. The motion was carried.
Thanks, Tracy. Well, I think that brings us to the end of our agenda for the day. Thanks very much to everybody who has come and presented, Joe and Darlene, for your thorough information, and Mike for being there to speak to us in the background as well, and to any joining online or viewing the subsequently. Kia tau ngā manakitanga a te mea ngaro ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia mahia te hua mā kihikihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo. Māori tihei Māori ora.
No.
Thank you.
Māori ora. Kia ora.
Ai Māori re.
Kia ora, noho ora mai.
Tēnā koutou.